Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a little bit of a hard topic to talk about, but I want to talk about why yellow sucks in this current format, Draft Box 6 meta. This is a tough video to talk about because I'm not looking to say in any way, shape, or form that if you're playing yellow, you're a bad player or you're playing an awful deck. I think some yellow decks are good, but it's just the fact that, you know, with the results of the events we've been seeing over the past several months, yellow is just really not cutting it. Yellow is not really stacking up in terms of the rest of the meta, and this is tough to talk about too because I love yellow. Some of my favorite cards in the game are yellow, Raiders Warcry being one of them. I love a lot of the stuff that yellow tries to do in this game. It's very control-y, very interruptive, but it's not like necessarily overbearing, at least in the form of like yellow mid-range, in my opinion anyway. But again, this is going to be a video a lot like yesterday where it's just all my opinion, my thoughts on the current state of the game. I'm not saying the game's in an unhealthy spot by any means. Not every color is going to be good every single set. That's something to also keep in mind here. For the longest time, blue was overpowered, then yellow became really strong for a while, and we've kind of been seeing this fluctuation over the past few sets of, you know, different colors kind of stepping up to the plate and doing very well. This time around, we've finally seen green do a lot of things, which that hasn't necessarily been the case in the past. But anyways, I want to talk about this in today's video, guys. Maybe talk about some points where yellow can kind of step its game up. Maybe they can do that from like the design perspective. Again, it's okay that, you know, yellow is not doing so great right now because there will be color fluctuations, but in my opinion, I like yellow as a color a lot, and I think I have some ideas as where it can improve. So if you guys are new here, definitely subscribe, hit that bell, send us a video. If you want to help the channel out, there are lots of links down in the description to do so, particularly today, guys. If you want, go check out the Patreon. You can help out in a big way there by donating. You can also get some more competitive content if you want to step your game up, start thinking about the game a little bit differently, perform at a higher level. That being said, let's get started. So to preface this video, I want to mention that this, you know, Sin Shenron is kind of the exception to what I'm talking about, right? Sin Shenron's been doing quite well since both set 10, and it's been doing quite well in set 11. Doesn't top every event. I don't know how many wins it has off the top of my head. If I had to guess, I would say probably 2 or less, combining set 10 and set 11, just for the amount of times I can recollect, you know, doing meta breakdowns, talking about Sin as the winner. Definitely hasn't been too much, but Sin is definitely the most consistent yellow deck when it comes to, you know, doing well in both this meta, in pure set 11 meta, and even set 10 meta, right? So Sin is kind of the exception, but it is one of those archetype decks. Now, when you look at an archetype deck, especially one that packs so many cards into its main deck like Sin Shenron, yes, it's yellow. Of course, that's just the color identity of the deck, but it's not necessarily like, it's not like a yellow mashup deck. It's not like a yellow mashup of cards that, you know, just do strong yellow things, right? And that's perfectly okay. But my point just to say that is, I think when you look at any archetypal deck like this, like green Gotenks, like red Broly, anything like that, you're not so much looking at what the color does. You're more so looking at what the archetype does. And then if that archetype does something powerful, well, yeah, it's probably going to be a deck that's in the meta, right? It's going to be a pretty strong deck. If the deck is not so much of an archetype, more just like an amalgamation of very strong cards of a certain color or 2 colors, that's more so where you can look at it and say, okay, is this color lacking just based on its own merit? You know, Sin Shenron technically could have been printed in, you know, any color pool. You could have the same Sin Shenron archetype in red, and maybe it wouldn't have so much to do with like resting battle cards and stuff like that, but it could still be the same archetype in any color, right? This is more so talking about yellow as a color pool with its own kind of generic identity. Hopefully that makes sense. Kind of trying to differentiate the idea between like an archetype and, you know, a yellow mashup deck that we were used to seeing in the past more so. So anyways, moving on. Gotenks, this is the yellow deck more so in line with what I'm talking about, not necessarily a full archetype. Yes, there are Goten Trunks and Gotenks cards, but this deck was never just like a pure Gotenks deck, right? There were a lot of cards you put in this deck that just did strong yellow things, and this deck was doing quite well in set 10, had a few wins here or there. A lot of the really good players are playing it though, like Jordan Markle, Amani Edwards. I know they were really big on this deck in set 10 format, and that definitely is gonna, you know, lead to results when you have amazing players like that piloting this deck. That's going to lead to some great results. But besides that, especially moving into set 11 and Draft Box 6 meta, we haven't really seen much of Gotenks. We haven't really seen much of a, you know, generic yellow deck in general. And especially moving into set 11 Draft Box 6 format, the 2 newest leaders to that color pool, the Skillless Gohan leader and Garlic Jr., also haven't really done much in the grand landscape of the meta. As far as I can recollect, actually, none of these leaders have any tops in set 11 or Draft Box 6 meta, which again is okay. Once again, yellow does not have to have a dominant force in this meta, especially considering all the dominance it's laid in the past. I'm just saying that this is just like the state of the thing, right? And I like yellow, and it's my channel, so I want to talk about some yellow stuff here. Anyways, this stuff not been doing so great. Garlic Jr., I think, has potential to kind of turn it up in a sense because of the new expansion Garlic. That basically takes the deck and allows it to just work a whole turn faster, which in a game that usually goes to about 4, 5, 6 turns, being 1 turn faster, it means a heck of a lot. But the thing with Garlic Jr. there with the new expansion promo that allows you to do that is it's so stringent on its curve. It's so particular on its curve that if you miss Machio on 1, if you miss the new expansion promo on 2, and you don't get your Unison on 3, well, you're going to be pretty severely behind. So being so strict on a curve like that can hurt a little bit, although I think it does get a nice power boost from that. Skillless Gohan, when I look at Skillless Gohan and I look at Gotenks from set 10, I see a lot of similarities in the sense that they're not pure archetype decks. They have certain things that synergize with them. For example, Gotenks wants to play some of those Gotenks fusion cards because, you know, the leader gets benefits when you Union Fusion, and the 7-drop Gotenks offer some nice removal. And then the Gohan stuff, it synergizes with the 1-drop 10k skillless cards, especially the Icarus cards where you combo them to draw cards. Your leader's backside has a great activate main where you play a skillless and draw a card, essentially plussing 2 for free. All that stuff is great, but why is this stuff lagging behind so much? And that kind of leads me to my next point. You know, yellow does have some strong things going for it. I think Raider's Warcry is still an incredible card, albeit, you know, nowadays we do have some pretty strong counterplays to a card like this in the form of like Frieza Charismatic Villain. That's really pesky because, you know, you basically pay 2 energy and kind of do nothing. Like, you're basically paying 2 energy for a pseudo combo at that point because they can Frieza and they can pop your Raiders. There's also Godsling Technique Trunks, which is very much akin to like the combo cards that people had to play several formats ago before Trunks came out. Basically like the Weskai and the Jocko that would bounce Raiders back to your hand if you would Raiders offensively. Now though, I mean, Godsling Trunks is basically that same type of card, but now you can do it offensively or defensively, as opposed to those combo Kais and those combo Jockos where you had to do it defensively, and the Raiders player could pretty much be safe in terms of raidering defensively, if that makes sense. And then Basil Fatal Rampage, amazing card for yellow as well. Basically gets a lot of value when your opponent starts making bigger plays. That 19k dual attacker helps clear unisons. And then Bergamo Ferocious Roar is, in my opinion, is an excellent card for disruption, because when you pair this with Zamasu Super Combo, you can kind of tap out your opponent, or at least limit their energy to a sense where they're not making the big play they wanted to make on that turn. And that's one of the things I think yellow falls short on, even though these cards are very, very strong. I think there comes a point where yellow just does what it does. And what yellow does is it interrupts the opponent, but it also heavily punishes the opponent for misplaying. Now, as time goes on and yellow doesn't get any new crazy things added to its strategy, like the last thing here is Bergamo and Basil, which were added in Draft Box 5 quite some time ago. So when this is like the shtick that yellow has, right, and it punishes your opponent for misplaying heavily and interrupts in that way, well, people are going to learn how to sequence. Even the, you know, the common player is going to learn how to sequence against yellow and not get punished, right? Like sequence around Raiders, sequence around Zamasu Super Combo, sequence around Bergamo Ferocious Roar, things of that nature. And when nothing new gets added, there's not necessarily this new cool thing that people have to learn how to play around. And that's kind of what yellow does, right? It does that. It makes your opponent play in a certain way, but if they know how to play in that way, they're going to get around a lot of the value that your stuff offers. Now, granted, you know, if your opponent's playing a go-wide strategy, Zamasu Super Combo is always going to be good. Raiders is always going to be good. Ferocious Roar can always interrupt them. But certain strategies have learned how to play around this to a very effective degree. It's kind of the same thing as Invoker, right? Like, yeah, at first, Invoker is incredibly annoying. They have the Barrier Vegeta. They have all the extra cards that stop your stuff. But once it's been around for a while, you kind of just know, okay, I got to do this to get around that, do that to get around this, and that whole thing. So that is one of the ways I think yellow falls short, even though it has a lot of powerful things at its disposal, right? So moving along here, one of the things I think yellow does really well is it deals with boss monsters very, very effectively. You have many types of Crusher Ball effects, just bringing big things in play tapped. You have a lot more skill negation effects actually now than we've had before, which is also a very nice thing to see. So things like Fu Shrouded, things like a lot of secret rares between like Chomp the Trickster, Mutaito, Crusher Ball, Prideful Transformation Vegeta. You have a lot of things to stop big things like Shroud, like Secret Rares and things like that. That's very, very good. And Secret Rares are a big force right now. Celzino is big right now. Apex Victory Strike is big right now. Things like that are quite good. And what's really cool about yellow also is actually it has one of the very few answers to a card like Baby Hatch, where the only thing that stops Baby Hatch is actually a counter. Yellow has that with Swift Retaliation Cooler, which is very, very nice. But One of the main things that yellow is lacking at this very moment is wide board, the ability to deal with a wide board rather. I don't necessarily want to say wide board removal, because at this point green has that with like Dorm Potential, making Obuni a bit more of an obsolete card in that matchup. Also, Dorm Potential does very, very well against deck like Vegex, where you're spamming those low cost Kais, right? You can take out multiple of them at a time. Even blue with Godsling Technique Trunks in the mirror match deals with Obuni tokens basically for one card. In yellow, for instance, if you're going to do anything against Obuni, it's probably going to be using Prideful Transformation Vegeta against the tokens, but you're just lacking removal. So you don't have a great way to deal with those tokens. You know, Raiders Warcry, Bergamo, for as great cards as they are, they don't necessarily help you deal with those battle cards. You have to like attack in, combo Raiders, hope you kill one of the tokens. They could potentially super combo out of that, or do something, you know, like a pseudo combo, negate, whatever. Play Raiders, maybe attack into another token. Maybe you didn't even kill the first one. You can see where I'm getting at with the problem here, right? Now, defensively, again, Raiders is great, Bergamo is great to stifle off those attacks, but not dealing with those problems is something I think that yellow has started to notice over time in terms of its ability to compete, right? If you can't rest all those cards every single turn after turn after turn, while not also winning the game very shortly after, your opponent's just going to start drowning you out in card advantage, if that makes sense. So I think that its ability to deal with big guys is pretty good, but its ability to deal with low cost spam is a little bit hurt, or a little bit lacking rather, for yellow in this current meta. Next up, guys, the negate thing of yellow has always been something that's kind of irked me, right? Time Magic, it's a sparking negate of yellow. This card doesn't always see play. I think it's actually pretty good in a format like this, where we have like Grim Reaper of Justice. It's a big dual attacker, so Time Magic being a 1 energy, you know, stopping both those attacks, that's great. But it's kind of specific in its application where it taps something down, and if there's not a prominent dual attacker in a given meta, well, Time Magic is going to be a lot less valuable. Nimbus, as good as Nimbus has been over the history of the game, it's definitely not as good now, and that's just obvious, right? It's not Dormant Potential Unleashed. It doesn't restrict unison attacks. So basically, if your opponent plays around Nimbus, they'll attack with battle card. You'll use Nimbus there. They have at least 3 more attacks, depending on like if the unison has dual attack or the leader has dual attack, whatever, right? So you're not stopping as many attacks as Nimbus was able to back then, and that's fine. You know, should yellow get a Dormant Potential Unleashed? Probably not. That would probably be a little bit too strong, especially for more than one color to have it. And again, a lot of times when you're up against those wide decks, having Nimbus is better than not having it, because even though it won't stop as many attacks, it's still stopping some number of attacks, right? It's not quite dormant, but it is still stopping some number of attacks, which is something that to consider and keep in mind that you want to have that type of value. But then you have a deck like Reboot Gohan, which just absolutely doesn't care about Nimbus. Luckily, yellow has one of the best answers to Reboot Gohan in the game, which is Release from Evil. That is one thing that the deck has going for it, or the color pool has going for it rather. But having one good matchup is not going to make your deck, you know, jump up in meta popularity, right? That's just not how it's going to work. So overall, I think one of the biggest things I've driven home in this video is that yellow is really lacking in form of like generic removal, which could be played in any yellow deck. The Gotenks deck, yes, they play these cards in them, and I think it's really cool that the new expansion Goten and Trunks basically turns going all out into like, you know, remove anything in the game, right? Use this for fusion, you tap anything ignoring barrier, and then Gotenks kills anything ignoring barrier, also negating its skills, so it even gets around indestructible. That's great, but not every yellow deck wants to jam these Goten Trunks cards in the deck, because you know, Gotenks gets that benefit from fusing, as where a deck like Skillless Gohan doesn't quite get that benefit, right? Plus, to be honest, it's pretty costly. I mean, 3 energy, the draw 2 is great, but there's no protection on it, there's no barrier, there's no deflect. Maybe it'd be too powerful with barrier deflect. That's definitely an argument that I could see being valid. But I think what basically needs to happen is yellow probably needs some better form of removal to be able to compete in this meta, because one of the most important things in Dragon Ball Super in general, board state. If you overwhelm your opponent with the board state, they have to combo way more cards to effectively you know, not die whenever you're swinging in. So if they can't deal with the board, they're gonna be in big trouble. They don't have a sense of being type of card. Yeah, Protector of the People is a generic thing, but there's nothing specific to yellow that seems to help with wide board spam like that. I don't know what the correct answer is. I think some improvement in removal could be great. I think there are some generic things that yellow can do to probably bolster in the design department. But anyways, guys, I've been rambling long enough. I want to know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.